Hello Internet, welcome to the show where you get to listen to my ugly mug rant and rave about movies. And just so we're all on the same page, from here on out, I would prefer all of my puns to be intended. It's okay if you didn't laugh at that one. I didn't either, but I said it anyway because hey, that's showbiz, baby. Today, I'm talking to y'all about the Chronicles of Narnia. Not any specific entry in the series, just the whole thing. The Chronicles of Narnia are a set of 3 movies adapted from a series of 7 books. The first 2 were directed by Andrew Adamson, and the third was directed by Johnston. The first came out in 2005, and the others in 2008 and 2010. They star Georgie Henley, Skander Kynes, William Moseley, Anna Popplewell, Ben Barnes, Will Poulter, Chris Zanzibar, Tilda Swinton, and Liam Neeson. Whew. Now I know what you're thinking. Matt, those names sound made up. I've only ever heard of the last 2. And you're right, I did make one of those up. And besides those last 2, and a few British TV show roles under Anna Popplewell's belt, no one else on this list has done anything else. The Chronicles of Narnia are boring movies. Now, let me tell you a story. My wife and I went up to my hometown to see my youngest brother perform in a high school production of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. They had great costume design, everyone did it really well, and we went to get ice cream after. It was a really nice evening. What was I talking about? Oh, right. While I was watching, I kept thinking to myself, I have got to watch the Narnia movies again, because I had honestly forgotten about most of the important plot points of the movie. I had no idea that a couple of beavers played such an integral part at the beginning of the story. I forgot about the witch turning animals into stone. I forgot how many times they go back and forth through the wardrobe before the story actually starts. And the freaking Santa Claus thing came totally out of left field. I thought for sure maybe it was all just part of the play version and not the film version, but after watching the film, sure enough, there it was. I'm not saying any of these elements are inherently bad, but I think the fact that I didn't remember any of these things after only a couple of years, they are forgettable and therefore make it a boring movie. The characters aren't interesting, and they have no appealing qualities other than being wonderstruck kids in a magical new universe. Edmund is the only one that has any kind of development during the first one, but after that, he can never seem to let go of what he did. It doesn't teach us any important philosophies, leave us with any resonating feelings or questions. It just kind of falls flat on its face as a boring, generic fantasy film. The story is overly long and doesn't have enough substance to carry our interest through the whole thing. And the pacing in the sequels is so all over the place. It's like a chihuahua with ADHD that just downed its 12th cup of coffee. I mean, can you imagine that? That little dog would vibrate so much it could be used as an unlimited source of energy. So, does anybody happen to know how many Narnia films there actually are? I mean, I mentioned it earlier. And I asked several people in the process of writing this script, and got mixed reviews across the board. Some people said 3, some people thought only 2 got made, some people said 4, and my neighbor said, seriously Matt, get out of my house, it's 3 a.m. and I will literally call the cops on you this time. The answer is 3. There is a 4th one in talks of being made, but that was nearly a decade ago when the idea first got pitched. It's passed through a couple of different directors, and the rights have been bought, sold, lost, found again, transferred, and subsequently thrown away. It's been through different creative teams, titles, and writers. Right now, it's in the hands of Netflix, with the last bit of news we've heard coming from October of 2017, and talks of it being a TV show with a soft reboot. Who knows what will happen next, if anything happens at all, but it's clear that the 3 movies that have been made were so boring that a 4th just wouldn't be a lucrative investment. Now, I know it sounds like I'm really ragging on these movies, and I'll be honest, right now I kind of am. I just wanted to get the big glaring issues out of the way first so I can focus on some more productive things later. Keep in mind, the reason we do this particular show is to talk about movies that have good ideas and good potential, but lack in the execution. You see, there's nothing wrong with fantasy as a genre, however, it's much like steak. The more and more it gets overdone, the more it starts to lose its flavor. And for our vegetarian viewers, let's see, fantasy is like kale, sure. And the more it's cooked, it starts to taste absolutely terrible. Look, I lost the metaphor, but I think you get the idea. It's refreshing that these movies take the usual goblins, elves, and trolls and substitute it for animals. It makes it seem like if you accidentally ran into this world, it might take you a minute to realize you're not still in the real world. That is, until a beaver starts talking to you and criticizing your fashion sense, and then I think it would be kind of obvious. By the way, Liam Neeson voicing Lion Jesus? Great. Tilda Swinton gave a very convincing performance as the witch, and every scene with her was beautiful and haunting and gave me chills, which I think is the point. However, I feel every time she was brought back in the sequels was kind of pointless. The locations are very beautiful, and there's some good choreography in the action scenes. There was also a lot of money that went into the graphics for this film, which puts it way ahead of other CGI-heavy movies that came out at the time. The first movie is easily the best one. Even though I forgot about most of the details of the film, doesn't mean it's entirely forgettable. It did make a decent impact on the cinematic world at the time, but after its time in the limelight, it sort of faded into the background. Because of the success of the first one, however, the filmmakers decided to use the exact same formula for the second one. Don't believe me? Consider this. Our four main characters accidentally appear in Narnia, but this return has somehow been prophesied for a long time. Narnia is under some sort of tyrannical ruler who oppresses the poor talking animals, the White Witch, who made it always winter but never Christmas, and Caspian's uncle Miraz, who, if I heard correctly, made it always spring or something. I don't remember. You know, I always thought that phrase was really weird, even as a kid. Like, the witch is so evil, and the worst thing she does is just make it not Christmas. It's like if Ariel from The Little Mermaid complained that it was always wet but never a pool party. Wait, isn't that actually what she was complaining about? Anyway, in both films, everyone in Narnia seems to just think Aslan is a myth and no one really seems to believe in him, except for Lucy. They battle the bad guys by standing on either side of the field and running at each other, but not before our heroes use some kind of ancient rule or tradition to stall the main bad guy first. Aslan appears at the last second to save everyone, and then everyone lives happily ever after. The third one was under a new director, and therefore they used a new story. Thankfully, but by this point nobody was paying attention. And it's best they didn't, because Tom Treader was a mess.
No one, repeat, no one touches the tail. Period, exclamation mark. Sorry.
Now, let's talk about the rules of this universe. We are to understand it's a magical universe, but besides the witch, do we really see that much magic go down? I mean, magic animals talk, sure, and some weapons and items have some quality that occurs when you believe in yourself or something like that. But other than that, it's not as clear. In the third one, Eustace gets turned into a dragon randomly. Yeah, he did. While I was watching, I thought, did they just kill Eustace? Yeah, I mean, he was annoying, but that was a dark turn, movie. But no, it was actually much worse. The only explanation he gets is, well, yeah, everyone knows dragon treasure is enchanted. Duh, obviously. Except the audience didn't know that. If we weren't already bored, alienating us like that definitely did it. Aslan apparently is able to do anything and everything that's convenient for the story, including exploiting some kind of ancient rule only he happened to know about, so that he could come back to life. So besides him, it seems like no one else really knows the rules either. Rules are important to understanding the story. One does not simply walk into Mordor. Feelings of fear and hate lead to the dark side. And if something is chasing you from behind, you have to run in the direction it's traveling and probably trip on the way. Without rules, we can only assume anything goes, and then things get so convoluted we can't follow the story anymore and we get bored again. So the Narnia movies are boring, but how do we fix this? I think it stems from the source material. C.S. Lewis was alive and writing around the same time as J.R.R. Tolkien. Lord of the Rings was a lot more successful, though, because there was more substance to it. The battle scenes in Lord of the Rings have weight to them, consequences. And when they weren't fighting, they were talking. The dialogue set up exposition and laid out rules of the universe. In Narnia, the action scenes seem to be like a break from the actual story, similar to how dance numbers would occur in old musicals like Singing in the Rain. We take a moment to watch them fight a couple things, and then we pick up where we left off with the story when it's done. The dialogue doesn't do enough to establish the world in Narnia, and they all just end up complaining about how they're late for tea time. British people, am I right? Just kidding. I love our friends across the pond. Anyway, I want to reiterate what I said earlier about fantasy being overdone. Lewis was essentially creating yet another fantasy world that was unique in its own right, but I feel lacked the substance Lord of the Rings had. He knew he couldn't borrow too much from Tolkien, so he added his own personal touches to the universe. His background is one of heavily Christian roots. He added similar allegories, principles, and metaphors into Narnia to make it personal and meaningful to him. I'm not here to dispute his beliefs or his writing style at all, but it is difficult to adapt that to film in a way that audiences wouldn't get bored. Not everyone believes the same way he does. Too heavily on the Bible references and Christian similarities, like the last two movies did, and people get bored. But if you choose not to include many of those, which is what the first one did, and then there isn't enough substance, and you guessed it, people get bored. It was a classic doomed if you do, doomed if you don't. It seems like Lewis knew this would happen too. He was adamant to not sell the film rights the entire time he was alive, because he was worried no one could make a faithful enough adaptation to the world and characters. His stepson eventually agreed to sell the rights after seeing a few reels of the CGI animals. The movies got made, they made less and less money back as time went on, and now here we are with no solid direction to continue the franchise, and the only conclusion I can feasibly come up with is that they fell under the unfortunate curse of the boring movie. I literally have nothing else to say after that smooth as butter ending, so I'm just gonna go. Catch us next time, where we try to set an elaborate trap for Usain Bolt. So, bye.